No thanks. What does that mean?
I don't want to go.
Go where?
For a ride.
A ride! Hell, that's a good idea. Okay, let's go. Let's go. Get your f***ing robe. Raymond!
Dennis Hopper was Hollywood's ultimate rebel, a man who thrived on chaos, defied the system, and built a career out of breaking the rules. But behind the wild eyes and legendary on-set blow-ups was something you might not expect. A devoted father. From Dodge City, Kansas, to the red carpets of Cannes, Hopper's life was a whirlwind of fame, scandal, and reinvention. Along the way, he had 4 children with 4 different women, each arriving during a different chapter of his turbulent career. Their stories, shaped by the glare of his celebrity and the shadow of his unpredictability, are as fascinating as any of his films. This is the journey of Dennis Hopper's kids, and where they are now. And if you are into classic Hollywood icons, amazing stories, and newly discovered insights, then hit that subscribe button. We are on our way to 10,000 subscribers, and your support will mean a lot to our channel. Dennis Hopper's story begins far from the bright lights of Hollywood. Born in 1936 in Dodge City, Kansas, he grew up in a small-town world that seemed worlds away from the bohemian chaos he would one day inhabit. As a teenager, his family moved to Kansas City and later to California, where he discovered acting and a restless creative drive that would define his life. By the mid-1950s, Hopper was on screen alongside James Dean in Rebel Without a Cause in 1955 and Giant from 1956, earning a reputation for intensity both in front of and behind the camera. He often spoke about how Dean influenced him, once saying, "I'd never met anyone who lived life as if it were art until James Dean. He taught me everything about being real on screen." That friendship left an indelible mark, fueling Hopper's drive to merge life and performance into something raw and authentic. The early promise paid off. He quickly became a sought-after young actor, appearing in a string of notable TV shows and films. But recognition would peak later in his career. His co-writing and directing of Easy Rider in 1969 earned him the Cannes Film Festival Award for Best First Work and an Academy Award nomination for Best Original Screenplay, cementing his place as one of Hollywood's great rule breakers. In 1961, he married actress and socialite Brooke Hayward. Their marriage brought him his first child, Marin Hopper, in 1962, right as his career was gaining momentum. Friends described Hopper at the time as brilliant but impossible, balancing late nights on set with bohemian parties at home. Yet, despite his growing reputation as a Hollywood maverick, he also showed a softer side, often photographing his young daughter and surrounding himself with art, poetry, and family. What came next was the start of a cycle, a career swinging between critical triumphs and public disasters, and personal relationships that burned bright, then fast. Each new chapter brought a new love, a new challenge, and in time, another child. After his marriage to Brooke Hayward unraveled in 1969, Dennis Hopper plunged into another whirlwind romance, this time with Michelle Phillips of the Mamas and the Papas. They married in 1970, but the union lasted only 8 days, a period Phillips later called the longest 8 days of my life. From that short-lived marriage came his second daughter, Ruthanna Hopper, born later that year. Her arrival was overshadowed by her father's increasingly erratic lifestyle, with Hopper spending much of his time on film sets or in the counterculture scene. The early years for Hopper's first daughter, Marin, were a mix of glamour and instability. Born in 1962 during his marriage to Hayward, her arrival came after a long labor at a Los Angeles hospital, with Brooke later recalling that Dennis paced the halls like a man about to go on stage. Marin grew up surrounded by Hollywood's creative elite, yet she also witnessed her father's temper and unpredictable disappearances for work or personal escapades. She has spoken of him with a mix of admiration and caution, describing him as brilliant endlessly curious, but sometimes unreachable. For Ruthanna, childhood was more fragmented. Her parents were not together, and most of her early memories of her father came in bursts, visits filled with art, laughter, and surreal adventures, contrasted with long stretches apart. She has noted in interviews that her father's world never had a clear boundary between real life and the performance of life, a fact that both inspired her creativity and made stability difficult. Henry Hopper, born in 1990 to Catherine Lanassa, experienced a softer version of Dennis. His birth came during a calmer chapter, with Dennis's career revived after Blue Velvet and Hoosiers. Hopper was present for the delivery, reportedly emotional, and often photographed holding his newborn son. Henry grew up between Los Angeles and New Mexico, where Hopper exposed him to art, film, and travel. Henry has said his father encouraged him to find his own voice, telling him, "Don't imitate me, you'll be better if you fail as yourself than succeed as a copy of me." And if you are into classic Hollywood icons, amazing stories, and newly discovered insights, then hit that subscribe button. We are on our way to 10,000 subscribers, and your support will mean a lot to our channel. Galena Hopper, born in 2003 to Victoria Duffy, was still a child when her father died in 2010. Her earliest years were spent in a sprawling Venice Beach home filled with art and vintage motorcycles. Hopper, by then in his late 60s, doted on her, calling her "my second chance to slow down and enjoy this." Friends recall that he was more patient and affectionate with Galena than he had been with his older children, perhaps aware that time was running short. For each child, life with Dennis Hopper meant existing in the slipstream of a man who could be both the most exciting person in the room and the hardest to hold on to. Births were celebrated with genuine joy, but their childhoods were inevitably shaped by his restless pursuit of art, adventure, and reinvention, a pursuit that left its mark on who they would become. Marin Hopper was born June 26, 1962, in Los Angeles, the first child of Dennis Hopper and actress Brooke Hayward. Her birth was a long and anxious one, with Brooke recalling how Dennis paced like a trapped animal outside the delivery room, too nervous to sit still. Marin grew up in a household where the living room doubled as a gallery, filled with paintings, rare books, and the occasional motorcycle parked indoors. She attended Brown University, worked in fashion publishing, and eventually founded her own accessories line, Hopper Goods. She has one daughter, Violet, and has spoken about wanting to give her the stability she often lacked as a child. Marin has curated exhibitions of her father's photography and keeps many of his cameras, saying, "It's how I hold on to the part of him that was quiet and observant." Ruthanna Hopper was born 1972 to Dennis and singer Michelle Phillips. Her early life was shaped by separation. Her parents' marriage ended before she was born, and she spent most of her childhood with her mother. She saw her father in bursts, weekends in Taos filled with oddball characters, photo shoots, and midnight drives. Ruthanna carved out her own creative path as an artist and author, co-writing the novels Chatter and Bad Habits. She has no children, preferring to devote herself to her work and travels, and often says she inherited her father's compulsive curiosity, but not his need for the spotlight. Henry Hopper was born September 11, 1990, to Dennis and actress Catherine Lanassa. His birth came during a calmer period in Hopper's life. Dennis was sober, back in Hollywood's good graces, and present for the delivery. He often took Henry on location, turning film sets into makeshift playgrounds. Henry entered acting himself, starring in Gus Van Sant's Restless, 2011, but has since stepped back from the industry. He has no children, spends much of his time surfing, painting, and taking photographs, and keeps many of his father's leather jackets as reminders of the cool that was just him being him. Galena Hopper was born March 26, 2003, to Dennis and his fifth wife, Victoria Duffy. By the time of her birth, Dennis was in his late 60s and far more settled. Friends say he was deeply involved, reading her bedtime stories, taking her to school, and telling anyone who would listen how Galena saved me from speeding through the last part of my life. She was only 7 when he died in 2010, and much of her connection to him now comes through family stories and the art he left behind. Galena has no children, studied art and fashion in New York, and keeps a quiet profile, occasionally posting personal tributes to her father on social media. In their own ways, all 4 children were shaped by the unpredictable rhythm of growing up with Dennis Hopper, sometimes present, sometimes gone, always larger than life. They carry pieces of his charm, his eye for beauty, and his restless creativity, but most have chosen lives with more stability than the one he lived. Dennis Hopper passed away on May 29, 2010, at the age of 74, after a battle with prostate cancer. In his final years, he had become something of an elder statesman in Hollywood, still unmistakably the rebel, but softer around the edges, more reflective about the life he had lived and the family he had raised. By then, his home life had slowed considerably. He spent much of his time between Venice Beach, California, and his beloved Taos, New Mexico, surrounded by art, photography, and close friends. Galena, his youngest, was the center of his world in those last years, and he often spoke about the joy she brought him. Hopper once admitted in an interview, "When you're young, you think you have all the time in the world for your kids. Later, you realize time is the one thing you don't get back." He had also grown candid about his own shortcomings as a husband and father. In one late interview, he said, "I wasn't always there, and I can't change that. But I hope my kids know I loved them, even when I was chasing something else." On the balance between career and family, he once remarked, "Movies fade. Awards gather dust. But when you go home and your kids are happy to see you, that's the real success." Even in poor health, Hopper continued to work, attending events, taking photographs, and making art. Just months before his death, he was awarded a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, where he addressed the crowd and his children. "I've had a hell of a ride, but the best thing I ever did was become a father." Dennis Hopper's journey didn't end in Hollywood. It came to rest here, in the quiet adobe town of Taos, New Mexico. At the Jesus Nazareno Cemetery, beneath the wide desert sky, his grave is more than stone and earth. It's a canvas, bandanas, rosaries, Mardi Gras beads, even a camera lens, left by fans and friends, strangers and soulmates, all telling pieces of the story he left behind. It's messy, colorful, unpredictable, just like the man himself. Only 2 months before his death, Hopper stood frail but smiling on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, accepting his star. It was a rare moment of stillness for a man who had lived at full throttle, a public goodbye wrapped in applause and camera flashes. And in Los Angeles, the Museum of Contemporary Art unveiled a sweeping retrospective of his photography, paintings, and sculpture, proof that Dennis Hopper wasn't just a movie icon, but a restless visual storyteller. In those frames, you see the same thing his kids saw, an artist searching, always searching. When his estate was settled, the largest share went to his youngest daughter, Galena, a quiet, final gesture of love from a man who often expressed it in unconventional ways. But the real memorial to Dennis Hopper isn't only in the desert, on the boulevard, or hanging in a gallery. It's in the 4 lives that carry his name forward. Marin, Ruthanna, Henry, and Galena, each shaped by the same man, but each walking their own road. Some followed his footsteps into art, others kept a careful distance from the spotlight. All of them learned that life with Dennis Hopper meant embracing both the magic and the madness. Today, his legacy lives in his vast body of work, his striking photography, and in the memories of those who knew him, especially his children, who carry both the brilliance and the lessons of his complicated, passionate life. Now I want to hear from you. What's your favorite Dennis Hopper film, and why? Was it the counterculture roar of Easy Rider, the haunting menace of Blue Velvet, or something entirely different? Share your thoughts in the comments. We read everyone. And if you enjoyed this journey through the life and legacy of Dennis Hopper and his family, don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. There's plenty more Hollywood history to come, and you won't want to miss the next story.